What's up everyone, Op Soldier here today, and today we're going to make this video a little bit brief, but it's going to go over a statement that good old Perfect Legend has said, or he generally asks a bunch of questions on Twitter, and I try to respond to them as much as I can because I think they're a very good way to study fighting game philosophy or strategy and further improve future fighting games. So Perfect Legend says in this tweet, FGC, where do you draw the line for strategy? It makes you say, I'm not playing this anymore. What is broken to you? So this is really complicated because there's a lot of reasons people stop playing fighting games, from zoning to overpowered pressure to getting grabbed one too many times to the down one mind games that came from MK11. There's a lot of stuff that convinces people to stop playing fighting games, but I would say the number one thing that makes me say, hey, this game is broken, and I have to make sure that I really clarify this, because if it's a fighting game and, like, for example, DNF Duel has infinites right now, I think we can all agree, again, I will always say this, that infinites are probably not going to stay in DNF Duel. So even though those are broken, those aren't necessarily things that would prevent me from playing the game. So I would say number one thing is, if the thing is so broken, like 8 Tanyas in top 8 broken, where all of the characters that I play do not have answers to whatever the problem is, right? Now this is very subjective in certain situations. For example, a lot of people say Sub-Zero needs to be banned from MK11. We can all agree, well, at least people who understand fighting games and what actually is broken, what actually is overpowered to where you have little to no answer, is not Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero is clearly, you block the 50-50, you kill him, he dies, right? Now, obviously, it's not as simple as that because the player is just not going to hand you a 50-50. Sub-Zero doesn't have to use 50-50s to beat you. But with that said, he does have counterplay. That's an example of counterplay. If you block the 50-50 and your character does a lot of damage, he's going to die for it, kind of thing, right? So I would say something where the character is clearly way more powerful than most of the characters you play, or even if you pick up another character to counter it, it's not really the best solution. I would say that that's the number one reason to why I would probably stop playing a fighting game. Again, that is subjective because a lot of the times people will play a fighting game, and this is kind of the most closed-minded stuff that I've ever seen in my life, but it's a very common thing in nowadays fighting games because people want to have fun all the time. They don't want to lab matchups. But a very common thing nowadays is people will play a fighting game, they will get frustrated about a certain play style, and then they'll uninstall the game or they'll refund the game, right? Me personally, I think that is a very closed-minded way of looking at fighting games, because that problem could be easily solved by maybe to play a different character, or maybe you lab and figure the matchup out. Doesn't matter what it is. So in this generation of fighting games, it's hard to see what is actually broken, because most people are just kind of not, they're just like, oh, this isn't fun, I'm not gonna play it, right? Or, oh, I'm getting zoned out, not gonna play it, you know. You go back years ago, that wasn't the case. Like, you know, if there was something that someone didn't like, they weren't just not playing the game, they weren't just like uninstalling the game, you know, people would learn to deal with it, or they would complain, you know, and still play the game. So nowadays, finding what's OP and what's not OP, unless you're a high level player, most of the time, you're not going to actually know if it's OP or not. So the other thing I would say is definitely if the thing has little to no counterplay. This is a common thing, at least with mechanics nowadays, and I think it's because, I don't know how to put it, the game likes to reward people who OS constantly. I don't know why that's a thing, but like I've noticed that a lot with some of these games nowadays, like especially Mortal Kombat 11, that's the one I can think of off the top of my head. The game really rewards you for just spamming OSs 24/7, and then the person on the side of offense has to like find ways to either blow up that OS or has to play a character that is an anti-OS character. And I don't know what I think about that personally. I don't think that's necessarily OP, But I do think that it's one of those things that, like, it's so skewed heavily in the other side of, like, it's so skewed heavily for the other player that it feels OP. Now, obviously, you could go to the lab and figure out counters, but again, it's one of those things, like, you have to work so much harder just to stop it, so it could be on the edge of being OP, right? And there's very easy fixes to this, right? Just make, you know, throws mids. That's an example of blowing up the micro duck OS. It's so hard to blow up with certain characters. Or switch characters, because some characters don't have to worry about the micro duck OS, like Liu Kang and Jackie. Or, you know, like the flawless block OS, switch characters. You know, certain characters can low profile certain up 3s and up 2s and stuff like that. Or another example is pick a character with a mid command grab. You know, if they have a mid command grab, no one can OS you with up 2, up 3s, because you just reversal command grab and they're gonna die for it, even if they try to OS. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is, like, there are counters, so when it really does come down to it, like, it's a little bit hard to see what is actually OP nowadays, because most of the time there are counters. It's not like before where you had 8 Tanyas in top 8. It's just not as simple as that anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and give my response, or tell you my response of what I put on his Twitter post, and just kind of leave it there and end the video. So let me re-say what he said. So FGC, where do you draw the line for strategy? It makes you say, I'm not playing this game anymore. What is broken to you? So I said, as long as it has a counter, it's not broken. If a character is 8-2ing the entire cast, then yeah, that's broken, needs to be looked at. If you're talking about DNF, because most of the time that's what people are talking about nowadays when it comes to broken, the only thing I deem broken due to the power creep in the game is the infinites. That's literally a bug. So, and I agree, I still stand by that. I think that really the most broken thing is probably infinites, at least right now. We just don't have enough information yet to decide what is broken and what is not broken. And then I said, to add to what I said earlier, the #1 issue with broken, especially within games, is that people will cry broken, meanwhile their character has a similar condition, same amount of power creep. So I'm wary of this concept of broken, because it's just asking their character to be top tier. And I actually stand by this, because there's a lot of situations where I'll say something is really strong, and maybe my character has also a similar counter, or I'm just not using the counter because I want the game to play a certain way, right? I'll use me as an example to blow myself up. So for example, right, you know, if I'm doing a flawless block, you know, if someone's doing a flawless block OS, or they're doing a duck OS, Katana can do that too. Like, Katana has one of the fastest up 2s in the game. She's got one of the strongest up 3s, you know, when she can't do up 2. So Katana can do all the OSs that people are doing to me, right? She can micro duck, she can do the micro duck, she can do the duck OS. Like, everyone can do the duck OS, every character can do that. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that, like, I could be doing the same thing. So, like, for me to say that someone else is doing it and I'm just not implementing it into my game plan is just something I have to look at as a player. And not to mention, like I said before, I have the anti-OS character. Like, Frost is an anti-OS character. You cannot OS Frost most of the time. There's only a handful of characters that can actually, like, consistently OS Frost. She's got so many ways to blow up OSs that it's not even funny. So with that said, I guess I'm going to just end the video here, and all I want to say is that OP is very subjective, especially unless the character is if the character is 8-2ing the entire cast, then yes, that might be OP. But if it's, you know, something you just don't like and you're struggling with it, and one character struggles with it and there's plenty of characters to counterpick it, it's probably not OP. It just feels OP to you because you're losing to it. So, this is a very common thing in fighting games. It happens to me. I make the same mistake. Fighting games are always going to be polarizing for certain characters and certain players. Some players just simply will not like the design of a character, and that's okay. But we shouldn't be saying that those things are OP. We should just recognize that those are things we don't like in a fighting game, whether it make it more boring to us or it just deter us from wanting to play the game because we don't get to play the playstyle that we want to play. So anyway, that's all I want to talk about today. Have fun playing fighting games and have a good fight.